Session 3.
Dog star swing.
I like that Spike's headphones always cue diegetic music. It's a cute touch that doesn't necessarily make up for storytelling mishaps, but I appreciate the funky attention to detail. This is the first episode of Cowboy Bebop that doesn't kick off with an action set piece. It pretty much picks up the Syndicate plotline right where episode 2 ends. Spike approaches a sushi-making Sekiro character in the cutest post-war French panel van that you ever did see, though thankfully the scene isn't drawn out. More of the overall time is spent on Spike and Jet's bounty storyline. Only in this episode, Jet is the one reluctant to get started. A recurring storytelling element that I'm finding somewhat challenging is the show's penchant for re-justifying leads initiative at work. As a viewer, I understand why a doctor is at a doctor's office, or a used car salesperson is on the used car lot. I appreciate that these writers are trying to make these character motivations more personal, but as presented, all this pre-job preamble is a pace killer. I don't see a reason why these characters couldn't fill us in mid-job. What are you gonna do with all the money from this job? I owe my daughter several birthdays worth of presents. This woodcock character is so loudly styled, I thought I had forgotten an anime subplot, but no, she's an entirely original comic relief cringe fest. When Spike and Jet are on the job, however, this episode really comes alive. I shared a few audible chuckles with the Bebop's crew this session. Something about Iron Fist jokes just really get me. Tharsis is a grungy mix of highly stylized CG and bright colored character lighting. It's probably just as small as New Tijuana's One City Square, but the tall buildings and skyline make it feel big. The story here is also more conventionally told. There's a central sci-fi conceit that feels integrated in this world. The leads do investigative work, they build up to a point where they finally find the bad guy, and then they have a big showdown. Hakeem and Spike's fight on the top of Betty's bottom is good. None of the fights so far have blown me away, but it's still fun seeing real fight choreography in a live-action adventure show. I've certainly enjoyed the prior episode's opening fight scenes, but I found this one a lot more compelling in the context of the storytelling framework. In this episode of What Did Vicious Bad, Vicious does a mass murder on his flock of naked, mutilated drug mule slaves. I just realized that Anna is a play on Annie. I don't completely understand Julia's performance, but I enjoy her self-actualization transformation. Julia feels helpless, and rather than call on a male agent, she seeks Anna's help. Anna suggests she bootstrap her own rescue. In a vacuum, it's interesting to see how writers play with giving Julia agency, but I don't really expect this character to flip how I feel about the Syndicate as a whole. So far, there have been a lot of recurring characters, and I'm bored by a few of them. Spike and Jet's investigation extends post-fight into a trophy comic relief scene involving a German entertainer with a fairly selective grasp of English. This may be the culturally Puritan American in me speaking, but it does feel kind of lazy. I've seen the European deviant talks funny scene enough times to disengage without a subversive element. The second climactic scene with Hakeem is more of an explainer than a showdown, a reverse Columbo if you will. We get the why for Hakeem's crimes, and then the space police just swoop in to steal the bounty for no other reason than to support Jet's characterization of his former colleagues as jerks. Speaking of jerks, Chalmers, the peer Jet assumes framed him for a crime he did not commit, looks like the Yosemite Sam version of one of those handsome Mario and Luigi cosplays. Hakeem had been kidnapping dogs, so Jet picks up fan favorite Ein and tries to give him to his daughter, only to learn that taxes are too high on dogs, and he once again fails in front of his ex-wife. Also, Yosemite is married to his ex-wife. Jet is demonstrably not a very together dad in this scene, which runs counter to how he's presented on the job so far. He and Spike are pretty poor despite seeming pretty good at their jobs. I'd be interested to learn more about the character defects that bar them from success. Listening to Vicious and Spike talk is boring. They exchange gruff platitudes, threats, and what I'm sure is supposed to be intrigue, but I've grown to treasure the episodic character moments and resent the overarching plot. Is it fair to taunt the creators with my own lack of Syndicate investment? Probably not, but here I am. The elements of the show that I've been enjoying, I enjoyed more than ever in this episode, and the Syndicate scenes that I historically haven't liked took up much less time than episode 2. When it comes to scoring, arbitrarily, I found a tendency amongst gamers to disreview scales of 10 or review scales that include fractions. For this episode, however, I feel uncomfortable giving it a 2 or a 3. Both feel mildly disingenuous. Taken as a whole, this episode is still pretty fun. So in the spirit of Starbucks' wet cappuccino, the halfway step between cappuccino and latte, I give Stray Dog Strut a hard 2, soft 3, whatever you want to call it. Nighty night, Space Cowboy. When you think about it, eating a protein bar is a lot like being in the future because it has nutrients, but it sucks. Ever think about that? This is free protein bar ASMR. Yeah.